Hey, Shalom. Kalalal Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai. All praises, glory, and honor due unto Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai Bahashem Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone of GMS that rule well and that do teach well and that have taught me this truth. To you I say Shalom, and Shalom unto the hopeful elect. This is Brother Gobari Allah, coming back at you with another video / lesson, Lord willing. It'll be edifying and thought-provoking in the spirit. And I'm also from the GMS Toronto branch of Great Millstone, over here in Ontario, Canada. Now this is from RT.com. Lord willing, the link will be in the description. It says, what does Russia have to gain from the EU now? Western Europeans demand attention but offer no value. Wow, and that's coming from Vladimir Putin. He said that. What does Russia have to gain from the EU now? Especially Western Europe. And we know that the EU is a part of the beast. It is the beast, NATO and the EU. Right, but that's true, man. What does the EU have to offer, especially today? What do they have to offer? Nothing's coming out of Europe, and that's in the scriptures, man, because Europe is known as the bottomless pit when you go into Revelation, the 20th chapter. And also there's a phrase out there. It says that Europe is a bottomless pit. Bottomless just means fruitless, and a pit means land. It's a fruitless land. It is fruitless on all levels, financially and even physically, when it comes to yielding exotic things and certain luxuries and resources. So it's a fruitless land. It is. But when you use the phrase Europe is a bottomless pit, it just refers to its financial situation going into the whole Eurozone, on how it is facing significant economic challenges, right? Especially with these weaker nations that are a part of Western Europe. You know, and one example that comes to mind is Greece. Greece has a lot of financial problems. They face a lot of economic hardship and instability, and you've seen a lot of uproars in that nation. You know, that nation had a lot of bailouts. They took a lot of bailouts. They threw a lot of money at their problems, but that was not enough to keep them stable. So, you know, I'm just saying that just to prove the point. What does Europe really have to offer, especially Western Europe? Like, everything they're doing is outdated. It's all analog. Russia is ahead. You know, when it comes to going digital, Russia's ahead of them. What do they really have to offer? And that's nothing. Let me get this precept, man. This is Revelation chapter 20, verse 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. We believe that angel to be Yahushua in the spirit. Yahushua, that's right. He is the Savior. Yahushua is very serious. I'm scared of Yahushua, man. I'm getting scared of him. I'm scared of the Lord too, man. I'm scared of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. They're very serious. Very serious entities, man. Yeah, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And for the most part, majority of the people on this earth, they're not wise. They don't fear the Lord. They do not fear Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. And you're going to see it, man. Isaiah 47:3. I shall not meet thee as a man. Revelation 19:11. He's coming back to take the crowns off of the kings of the earth's heads, man. He's going to do that by violence. Yeah. Isaiah 63. Who's that cometh from Basra with dyed garments? Yo, Yahushua is going to get busy. He's going to do a lot of killing. A lot of killing. Anyways, verse 2, it says, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil, and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. And that devil is talking about the so-called white man. Esau, Edom, the border of wickedness. I'm thinking about 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, the mystery of iniquity. That's him. That's him. And he's being revealed, man. Why? Because he is the border of wickedness. Because what is iniquity, man? Yes, we know iniquity is wickedness and sin, But iniquity is you being in the condition without having the law. I can't stress that enough. And this man, the way he rules and governs the nations and himself, it's lawless, man. He throws the Bible behind him and brings his own rules. And for the most part, it's catastrophic, man. It's just death. It's just death. It only makes sense. You know, the wages of sin is death. This guy makes it legal for you to commit adultery. That's death. This guy is grievous. All his ways are grievous. That's Isaiah 10:1, I believe. I'm going into his unrighteous decrees. Matter of fact, let me pull that up, man. Isaiah 10:1. It says, "Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people." Yeah, the poor of my people is you Israelites, starting with the elect. Really, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. See? But yeah, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees. Lawlessness, man. Corruption. And it's grievous. This man's ways are grievous. That's the so-called white man. Yeah. And by peace he shall destroy many. Because that's what he comes in. He comes in peace all the time. We get that. Daniel 8:25. This is Daniel chapter 8 verse 25. "And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand." And yeah, that craft, going into his craftiness, he's very cunning. But I'm thinking about witchcraft too, but still, I'm going to just stay on topic. It says, "Also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand." You see? That policy going into his laws. The fine print. He makes all these laws. And, you know, you already have laws. We already got the divine laws, but that's not good enough. I got to do it my way. And when he does it his way, you're destroyed. Yeah, that's this devil. But yeah, what does the EU really have to offer Russia, especially Western Europe? And that's nothing. That's nothing. Now, going back to Revelation chapter 20, verse 3, and it says, "And cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season." Yeah, going into the Byzantine Empire in the Dark Ages. That's when you were locked up, and we were ruling over you, and we had you in subjection. But you came back into power during the 1400s, the Renaissance period. What does the Renaissance mean? It means the rebirth. The rebirth of what? The rebirth of you devils coming back into power. Because before the Byzantine Empire and the Dark Ages, you were ruling. You ruled pagan Rome, you ruled Greece, and you ruled those other nations. You ruled Greece, mainly Greece and Rome. You ruled. And you were being wicked as hell. And you conquered many nations and destroyed people. And we're still actually feeling the effects of your previous rulerships to this very day. Hellenization is heavy over here. That spirit of Hellenization going into the games and that Greek lifestyle, we're still experiencing that. The Romanized way of doing things. Hey man, in America, they teach you in school how to count Roman numerals. Man, look at the political system. It's based on a two-party system. They have a Senate and things of that nature. That's how ancient Rome did things back then. That's how ancient Rome governed themselves. So we're still feeling the effects of how you ruled back then. But the main point is bottomless pit, because that's what I really want to focus on. Bottomless just simply means fruitless. Pit just represents a land. So Europe, for the most part, is a fruitless land. Nothing's really coming out of Europe. So what do you really have to gain from working with the EU? Nothing. First of all, their banking system's outdated. Their banks, the banking system, the way they do things is about to implode on themselves. That's why last week, or a couple weeks ago, I brought out this article from Zero Hedge. It says, Tether CEO Paulo Ardino, many European banks will blow up in the next few years. So what is he telling you? He's predicting what? Predicting that many of the continent's banks are at risk of catastrophic collapse. And that's why they're getting ready to bring forth the NWO and the MOTB. Or they call it a digital euro. That's what they're going to bring in first. And then you're going to get the MOTB. Right? And that system. So what's really coming out of Europe? Europe's outdated. It's backwards. And when it comes to banking and economics, Russia is ahead. Right? Russia is ahead. So why? They don't need you. They don't need you. Now, just to prove that bottomless pit, or really the word pit, represents land, I'm going to back that up by going into 2nd Ezra chapter 5, verse 23, point we made in verse 24. It says, and said, O Lord, that bearest rule of every wood of the earth, and of all the trees thereof, thou hast chosen the one only vine, and of all lands of the whole world, thou hast chosen the one pit. Okay, so yeah, pit represents a land. That's how you prove that pit represents land. And of all the flowers thereof, one lily. So the Lord has a favorite land, he has a favorite flower, and he has a favorite people. And Jerusalem is a people before it's a place, because that's what really makes the land. So the Lord, he loves Israel, he loves that land, and he loves the people, which are the Israelites. So that proves that pit is talking about lands. So Europe, it's a fruitless land. Nothing's coming out of there. Now let me go and read the article here. It says, Russia will have to ask a hard question. What exactly does it have to gain from Western Europe? At present, the answer appears to be very little. EU leaders behave as though Russia remains the same country they were, or they remember from the 1990s, isolated, weakened, and desperate to be heard. Yeah, and that's true, because back in the 1990s, what did you experience? You experienced the USSR collapsing on itself. And the leaders back then, they brought forth these economic reforms. I believe one of the economic reforms was called perestroika, which just simply means restructuring. With that restructuring, Russia had to open themselves to the world market. So they had to be, so they kind of were mercantilist. They went into mercantilism. It was a combination between communism and capitalism. In order for them to stay competitive and strong, they actually had to work with these other nations. So they had to trade. Right? They had to trade. And then also you had glasnost, which is freedom of speech. And that kind of led to their downfall too, because it exposed the atrocities that they did to their own people, because a lot of information came out and it exposed certain leaders and things of that nature. So that goes into like freedom of the press. But yes, it was perestroika and glasnost. Glasnost just simply means openness. So freedom of speech. So they're not that same country that they were back then. They're actually a powerhouse now. And that's why you have something called the BRICS. Which, what does the BRICS stand for? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And also you have other nations that are joined onto now. I believe Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Indonesia, especially Iran, which Iran is Persia, and they're actually a part of the dragons. They're one of the dragons of Arabia. That's found in the Apocrypha. So a lot of these non-European nations, they want to join Russia. And why is that? Because Russia's very strong. Russia's very strong. And they're very strong with economics. But anyways, so I just thought I'd say that Now, actually, let me bring this out. This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And this is the biblical name for Russia. The biblical name for Russia. Right, that's the biblical name. That is the biblical name. That's how you say it. It's just simply called Gawag Nashaya Ra'ash, right? That's what it's called in the Hebrew. Verse 3, and say, Thus saith the Lord power, behold, I'm against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Verse 4, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Yeah, so they have a big military. They're very strong. But you notice it says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaw. Yeah, so they're coming back in that old USSR spirit, which means I'm going to conquer the world. And that's why they can make bold statements like this, starting with Vladimir Putin. What does Russia have to gain from the EU now? We're as strong as ever. And we're only getting stronger. And we got nukes too. You see? Now, verse 5, it says, Persia, which is Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya, with them, all of them, with shield and helmet, and those are their allies. And you notice all these nations that are listed here are with the BRICS. They're either with the BRICS or they're on the waiting list to be a part of the BRICS. So Russia has allies. And with allies comes resources and more military power. Verse 6, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. You see? And I believe Gomer is Turkey. Right? Turkey. Turkey is a very powerful country. They're allies with Turkey. Now, let's continue on. It says, the world is gone. Today's Russia neither needs Western European approval nor fears its condemnation, and yet EU officials continue speaking in tones of paternalism and ultimatums, as if they still believe they represent something decisive on the world stage. And a recent display of this detachment came in Kiev, where the leaders of Britain, Germany, France, and Poland gathered to issue what can only be described as a performative ultimatum to Moscow. The content was irrelevant. It was the posture that was telling. One could only wonder who exactly do they believe is listening. Certainly not Russia, and increasingly not the rest of the world either. See that? Don't need you. And everybody's tired of Western Europe and the West in general, but mainly Western Europe. I'm tired of them being exposed for who they are. Bunch of devils, man. Now it says Western Europe today poses no independent threat to Russia. It lacks both military capability and economic leverage. And we just read Russia has a big military. Isn't that in Ezekiel the 39th chapter as well? And you're going to see that play out in these last days too, when the Lord comes back. Because the Lord is going to herd these nations into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And you're going to see how big Russia's military is. And you can see it now. Just Google the size of Russia's military. They have all types of weapons. And they have different branches of the military as well. They got a navy, they got an air force. They got special forces. They got lots of tanks. They have ICBMs, Scud missiles, and things of that nature. So this is Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 1. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus saith the Lord power, behold, I'm against thee, O Gog. Yeah, that's right. And the Lord is against you. He's against you. He is against you. And you're going to see that in these last days, how Yahushua is going to return. And also how the Lord is going to cause you to experience thermonuclear destruction. Because these other nations, well, these Western nations, they're going to shoot their missiles on you. Russia. Verse 2, and I will turn thee back and leave but the sixth part of thee, and will cause thee to come up from the north parts, and will bring upon thee the mountains of Israel. Yeah, so the sixth part of thee. So that's their main force, which is going into their military. A large part of their military is going to be brought to the Middle East, and they're going to fight. And then you're going to obviously have military troops guarding the motherland as well, like Moscow in important areas. But you notice it says sixth part of thee. It's talking about their military. Sixth part. It's a big military, man. So that's just to prove they have a huge military. Very big. Now, anyways, let's go back. It says, its real danger lies not in strength, but in weaknesses, the possibility that its provocations could drag others into crises. It cannot control. Its influence has diminished, and it has largely burned the bridges that once made cooperation costly for Russia. The West's Cold War fantasies are now detached from the material realities of global power. Yeah, the EU's elites' fundamental miscalculation is assuming that Russia still views the western part of the continent as a model to emulate. And why would you want to emulate that? Why would you? They're weak as hell. Weak as hell. And even that's why America wants to leave the EU. They don't want to be a part of the EU. Didn't Vladimir Zelensky come out and say, oh, look, President Donald Trump and America is undermining the EU. They don't take us seriously. You got Marco Rubio coming out and calling them what? I think it's NATO and the EU. I think it was either NATO or EU, but still, he's saying that they're little partners. Yeah, but I was really going into NATO because he was telling them to. I think he was telling them to put 2% of their GDP into their military, and a lot of them nations didn't do that. So that was going into NATO, but still, NATO and the EU are still a part of the beast. So that shows, man, America doesn't really want to be involved with the EU and NATO. They don't take NATO and the EU seriously. So yeah, so that Marco Rubio guy, which he's a top diplomat, he called them junior partners, and that's not good. That is not good. That is not good. Now, let's go into Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. And it says, Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass. Yeah, so that head of gold represents the Babylonian kingdom. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, and that represents the Babylonian kingdom. His breast and his arms of silver represents the Medo-Persian Empire. His belly and his thighs of brass, that represents the Greek Empire, headed by Alexander the Great, which is the he-goat in the scriptures. His legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. So the legs of iron represents ancient Rome, which was ruled by you Edomites. Same with Greece. Greece was ruled by you Edomites. His feet part of iron and part of clay represents the tributary states that were under Rome. Notice it says part of iron and part clay. That miry clay is going into that debt. Right? Because you had some of those tributary states, some of them were strong and some of them were weak. And that's going into that debt. And that's the EU. You have some nations that are strong, and then you have some that are weak. So they're not really that strong. That's why you have something called the euro. That's what they implemented. And that was to make these nations stronger. Well, who wants to be a part of that? That's why you had the whole Brexit situation. Because they were going to, that's why you had Britain. They didn't want to join what's it called? The European Union. They didn't want to join them. That'd make the buying power of the pound a lot less. Their money wouldn't be as strong if they were to join the euro. Why would you want to do that? So it doesn't really benefit you to be a part of the European Union. Just go into the whole Brexit thing. You can go research that yourself. But yeah, that's going into that debt and them being weak. Now, verse 34, it says, Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. You see? Now, who's that stone that it's talking about? That stone is talking about Yahushai. You can read that in Isaiah 8 and 14. I'll pull it up here. It says, Isaiah chapter 8, verse 14, And he shall be for a sanctuary, for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense, to both the houses of Yasharallah, for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken. And that's why he's called a stumbling stone. And that's why that stone cut out without hands, is going to smote the image upon his feet. Your feet is where your foundation lies, because you're able to stand on your feet. So he's going to take you down. That's why he's called a stone of stumbling. That's when you stumble on a stone. You trip over a stone, you fall, you break your leg or you break your arm. That's Yahushua, man. And that's what he's going to do when he comes back, pursuing to Revelation, the 19th chapter and the 11th verse on down. Isaiah 63. Who is this that cometh with dyed garments from Bozrah? Yeah, Yahushua is a serious entity, man. I'm scared of Yahushua. I'm scared of Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua, man. You don't want to get in his way. And that's what you people lack. A lot of you people out here, you lack fear. What does the scripture say about fear? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And that's what a lot of people lack. You don't fear Yahushua. People just think Yahushua is going to come back and pat you on the back and he's just going to give you a thumbs up. No, he's going to cut your head off, man. Yahushua has the authority to kill you. He really does. A lot of people don't really understand the titles that Yahushua holds, pursuant to Isaiah 9 and 6. Everlasting Father, he has that title. Remember, he has the keys to life and death. I believe there's a precept. Hold on. Keys. Yeah, here it is. He has the power of life and death. So this is Revelation chapter 1 verse 18. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death. So he can put you in a very heavenly state, or he can put you in a hellish state, and he can put you to death. He has that authority. So the Lord can kill you. He can curse you, man. That's somebody you ought to fear. A lot of people don't fear Yahushua, man. That's not good. That's not good. Not good, but you will see his wrath in the future. You will see his wrath. You will see his wrath. So let's go back here. I think I'm finished. Oh, yeah, I'll finish up verse 35. Daniel chapter 2, verse 35. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. That represents the kingdom of heaven, because that's what's going to be established here on the planet Earth. That's what Yahushua is coming back to do. Daniel 7:18, the saints of the Most High will take the kingdom. That's right. Psalms 149 and 6 on down, to bind their kings and nobles with chains and fetters of iron. That's what we're going to do, and that's the honor of all the saints. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do, guys. That's what we're going to do. Let's see here. Yeah, so when you read on down, so let's go to Daniel chapter 2, verse 41. And it says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of the potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. That's right. And that toes is going into the tributary states. And that also represents the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. Represents NATO and the EU today. And that's why they're divided. You know, a kingdom can't stand if it's divided. Let me get that. And that's in the book of Mark, I believe. Or Matthew. This is Matthew chapter 12, verse 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts, and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And and why do you want to? What can the EU offer now if they're divided? They're not strong. What can they offer? We just read it here. The Lord told us, man. Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And we just read that in Daniel chapter 2, verse 41. Right? Part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yeah, they're divided. They're divided because they're weak. They're not all on the same page. But there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And that iron represents the United States. The United States is holding up NATO and the EU. And now the United States wants to leave. They're not interested in the NATO and the EU because they don't benefit, because they're doing all the work. So what does Western Europe have to offer? Nothing, man. Jack shit. Jack shit. Jack shit. Verse 42. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Yeah. That clay is debt, man. Ibatia. That debt. Now I'll just finish up and then I'll close up. Says, this is where we left off, but today's Russia has little reason to aspire to European institutions, politics, or economic design. Indeed, in areas such as digital governments and public administration, Russia is ahead. Western European efforts to modernize Russia through consulting to institutional outreach have long since lost relevance. EU stagnation is not just political, but also technological. Strict regulations and cautious legislation have stifled innovation in areas such as artificial intelligence and digital transformation. In fields where other European nations could once have partnered with Russia, different global actors have already stepped in. The reality is that Western Europe has little to offer that Russia cannot obtain elsewhere. You see that? You see that? So with that, just want to give all praises, glory, and honor due unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone of GMS. To you I say Shalom, and Shalom unto the hopeful act. Kwame Shalom and Abba Ball. Shalom.